I'm back, and we have a problem motorcycle today. Motorcycle? It's a CBR600F4i fuel-injected motorcycle. And I'm thinking what we're going to see is we're going to see some coolant getting into the oil. And this is going to always be a problem. So I'm going to get you set up right here on this sight glass where you can see the oil. I'm going to start the bike up and we're going to see what's going on. Okay, so I've got you set up on the sight glass. Hopefully you can see that. And I think it's pretty clear. If not, let me know in the comments down below. And I'm going to start this bike and we'll see what we can see. We should see only oil. But what I'm expecting we're going to see is we're going to see a little bit of water kind of fogging this up or dripping here. So let's check that out. Let me start it up. Yeah, so exactly as I expected. That milky stuff that you're seeing right there should not be there. So it looks like, since there's obviously water getting into that oil, as we saw through that sight glass, we're going to end up taking this engine out and taking it apart to see what's going on. So watch the rest of the videos and I'll show you how to do that. Okay everybody, so we're going to take the engine out of this bike. We're going to have to take all of these other things off before we can get to the engine. So we're going to start with the tank. We'll show you how to do that. So I've got you guys over here. And you can see, you know, obviously a lot of the things have been taken off this bike, like the mounts for this are right here. There would be 2 bolts right here. And on the rear of the tank there would be 2 bolts right here. I've already got those off. So really what we need to do is just pull the tank up. And underneath the tank are some things that we need to disconnect. And we'll be able to see those right here. So I'm going to get you set up. I'll show you how to disconnect those. To take this gas tank off, there are 2 hoses we're going to have to take off. There's this hose here, which is the main feed hose from the gas tank to the fuel rail. And then there's this smaller hose here, which is feed back into the tank from the fuel pressure regulator. Obviously we don't want to just take these off, they'll spill gas all over, so I'm just going to pinch them off with some vice grips. You don't want to pinch them too hard, like I'm trying to do right here. You just want to pinch them enough that it'll close the lines. Okay, so that should be enough to pinch that line off. Then I'll pinch this line off here too. You know, you don't want to have the vice grips shut all the way. Sorry, I can get that up here. Just enough to pinch the rubber part of the hose together. So that should be good enough. So this has a Banjo Bolt right here. I don't know if you can really see that. Let me lift you up here, you can see. Here. And the other line over here just has kind of a pinch clamp, so you understand what I'm doing while I'm doing this. I'm going to undo this Banjo Bolt first. Sorry about the shaky camera. Now this is a 17 millimeter, just for reference. And there will be a little gas coming out of this. You're not going to be able to stop that if there was any gas in the tank. So you can take the Banjo Bolt off, and when you do that, you want to make sure it's got 2 little washers. It's got 2 little, maybe steel or copper washers on it that look kind of like this. Sorry, get that there where you can see it. You want to keep these. Make sure you don't lose these, like I just did that other one. We'll grab it here in a minute. So this one's off. The Banjo Bolt is off. And I'm just going to use a pair of pliers to get this other clamp off. It's a pinch clamp. Okay, it comes off pretty easy. And you should be able to just pull the hose off. Maybe I have to use the pliers to do that. Okay, so that's both hoses. And they're still dripping a little bit of excess that was in there. And after that, there is this line right here. This is the power for the fuel pump. So you need to pinch this and pull it out. So right down here, if I can find it, this line comes from here around to here, and you just pinch this and pull it out. And at this point, we're ready to just pull the gas tank off of the bike completely. Okay, once you got the gas tank off, you can see I got the gas tank off here. You're gonna have the air cleaners, the air cleaner housing, which is right here. Usually there will be a bunch of screws around here. Now I've just kind of mocked this one up so you can see kind of how it comes apart. There's one electrical connection right here, and this is for the air control center map sensor. And this is one where you just kind of pinch here and pull it off of there. This top box will come off, and there will be another box underneath here. Now on this bike I don't have that box on here because I've had this apart for a little while. But in any case, this two-piece, there will be an air filter and another box underneath here. So now there's several other things going on. We've got to take all of these things off of here before we can take the engine out. So I'll explain what some of them are. These are the throttle cables. So one is for pulling the throttle open, and one is for pulling it back shut again. Obviously we've got the fuel rail. There's a ton of electrical connectors and hoses down here that we'll get to in a little bit. One of the things you do want to watch out for is there is this idle set screw, and I can't seem to get it around here. All right, it just kind of screws into the throttle bodies, and it's just this little screw right here that you can turn and set the idle. You don't want to take it all the way out. We're just going to kind of let it sit right here, and it'll come off with the throttle bodies themselves. So the next part of taking these throttle bodies off is we're going to want to disconnect the electrical connectors to the fuel injectors. You can see the fuel injectors. They're right here and right here. Sorry, get my fat hand out of the way. So all along this fuel rail, there's 4 of them. And just under the fuel rail, you can see there are fuel injector connectors. See if I can get that to focus. These connectors right here. And the way these come off is you pinch the sides of them together and you just pull them off. So this is what they look like inside. You just pinch the sides together and pull straight back on all 4 of these. So they should come off fairly easily. And if I can see what I'm doing here, I'll be able to get this one off. Okay, so now all the fuel injectors are disconnected. So they won't be holding the throttle body on when we start to pull this off of here. The next thing we want to get to is down in here. There are rubber grommets that are holding this throttle body on. There's 4 of these, one for each Venturi and this throttle body. And these rubber grommets just have simple Phillips head screws. If you can see the Phillips head screw right here, there's one of those on each of these. There's another one right here. Another one down in here. So I'm going to set the camera aside for a second. I'm just going to loosen these up. They don't need to be taken all the way off. They're just screw-on clamps. They just need to be loosened enough that we can pull the throttle body out from them. So just a little tip to get down into some of these where these screws are down here. I'm going to just have a little stubby Phillips screwdriver. I mean, just a little short screwdriver. You know, because of the distance from here to here, you know, it's hard to get a big screwdriver in there. So just grab a little one like this. Let me go back. I did miss one thing when I was showing you how to unplug the fuel injector connectors. At the very end of this throttle body set, there's a throttle position sensor, and that's this piece right here. You just need to pinch the outside of this and pull it off also. It's connected in line with the injector connectors, so it would have kept this from coming off. So now that I got these throttle bodies, the rubber connectors disconnected, mine all seemed to want to come off together with the throttle body sets. So I'm just going to leave them on there like that. But if you notice, there's 5 or 6 different hoses in here. I plan to just leave these connected because I replaced these previously and they're all pretty new. But one thing you do want to watch out for is there is one that is connected to the same wiring harness as the throttle body connectors at the end here. And you just want to pull the rubber hose off of that, just like so. This comes straight off. Then we can move this whole throttle body harness over to the side and out of the way. The next thing we want to do, if you notice down here, this is the starter choke mechanism. This is actually run by the coolant system. So we've got 2 hoses right here where the coolant comes in and out of this body right here. Let me turn it this way so you can see maybe a little better. There's 2. And we don't really want to undo these because the system right now is full of coolant, which I should have drained previously. So we'll take care of that now before we take these off. I need to drain the coolant before I can finish taking these throttle bodies off. The first thing you probably want to do is make sure that the engine is cool. I mean, this one, it hasn't been running for a little while, or I haven't started it for a little while. Once it's cool, I mean, you can feel it's cool, and you want to take the radiator cap off. And it's behind the right side fairing. Obviously, I've got all the fairings off already. But underneath that right side fairing, you can push this down and just take the radiator cap off. You want to put it somewhere where it's not going to get lost. I'm just going to set it back there for now. And then, as we walk around to the other side of the bike, I'm going to get you set up right here. Right where the water pump is here. You don't have to take all of these and you don't have to undo these hoses. What you can do is this bolt here is actually a drain bolt too. So we're just going to take this one out with the radiator cap off. That will let air feed into the system, and the gravity feed should let this drain. So we're going to do that. I'm going to get you set up so you can see the bolt taken out, and hopefully this will start draining out here. And then I'll cut the camera off and wait for it to drain. I've got you set up here. We're going to undo this drain bolt. Hopefully I will see some coolant draining out of here. If not, I may have to undo a hose. In any case, this is a 10mm bolt, the infamous 10mm, the one that always runs away. And you can see I'm actually using a torque wrench because my 10mm didn't run away this time, but my ratchet ran away. Let's get this thing out of here. See if we can get some drainage going. And you can see it's already starting to drain. I'm going to be real careful when you're pulling this out because it's probably going to spray. So I'm going to move you back just a little. I'm going to move my pan back here. Just let me get this thing out here. Okay. She's going to be stuck. And probably it's going to be a joke on me if this thing sprays. I'm just going to spray a little bit, so be prepared for that. And you can see it's draining out pretty good. I mean, it's spraying out pretty well. But there it is. The bolt is out. And I'm going to cut the camera off and let this thing continue to drain. So I think we've got it pretty much drained what we can get through this hole here. Now if you could try to squeeze the hose, let me get my hand out of the way. You can squeeze the hose a little bit, you know, and keep trying to get a little pressure on there and pressure the rest of the coolant out of there. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the screw back. Oh, here's the screw that we just took out. I'm just going to put it back in here, finger tight, just for safekeeping so I don't lose it right now. Because we will be taking this water pump off of the engine when it's out. So just, I want to put that back just so I don't lose it. And I'm going to loosen this lower hose right here at this clamp. And that should allow whatever is left in here that I was unable to get out to flow out through the bottom of this hose. So let me get a screwdriver and we'll do that. So I have just a flathead screwdriver. And just loosen this clamp right here. Pull it back out of the way a little bit if we can. And we'll just make sure we got our pan right where we need it. Just wiggle this hose off. And we're going to get a lot more coolant to drain out of here that didn't come out through the drain hole. But we got most of it out through that drain hole, a little bit more out of here. And that should be pretty much everything that's in the engine. There might be still a little bit left in the very bottom of the case here, but I don't think there's any way for me to get to that without taking all of this off. So that'll be good enough for coolant drain. So I know everybody has their systems, and I want to just show you a little trick that I do. When I take a piece off of an engine, in this case, it's just the radiator cap, and obviously I'm only at one bike in here. I'm not going to lose this thing, but just for safekeeping, I like to just take a Ziploc bag, and I'll write what bike it's for. And obviously this is a radiator cap. I'm not going to get that confused with anything else. But in this case, I just wanted to show you, it's just a trick that I use to make sure everything stays as it should be. And then I have a little box that I'll put all these in. So I know everything for this bike is going to be in this box. So we've drained the coolant. Let me get these back out of the way again. And the main reason we wanted to drain the coolant was so that we can get these coolant hoses that are connected to the throttle body off without making a huge mess. So we're just going to unscrew these now and take them off. There might be a little drainage still, but it shouldn't be as big a mess as if we had not drained the system to begin with. I apologize for that. My camera died in the middle of me taking these off, but we did get the coolant lines off of the throttle body. Now that we've done that, the throttle body can lift out of the way. Let me get you up here so you can see it. And I think instead of taking these lines off, these are the throttle cables that run up to the throttle, I'm just going to kind of lay them out of the way. And they can hang up here while we take the rest of the engine out. Now that the throttle bodies are out of the way, there's a few hoses. Now this is a crankcase ventilation hose, and it goes to 3 places. It kind of connects down here, and it connects here, and it connects over here. So there are just 3 of these pinch clamps that you can pinch with your fingers. Let me see if I can get down here where you can see. You just pinch them and pull them off of there. And then the hose should just come off, like so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other 2 hoses, this one and this one, that go down inside here, and I'll be right back. I have the hose out of the way now, and you can see these are the spark plug coils. There's 4 of them, obviously, and these are very similar to what we had over here, the injector connectors. And to undo these, we need to undo the connectors. They're all connected in line here. You pinch on these instead of on the side. On these, you pinch the top and you pull. And I want to note one thing, and the same thing with the injector connectors here, is that inside these connectors, you can see this little rubber gasket. Sorry if I can get this up here. It's got a little rubber, that orange colored gasket right there. Just make sure you do not lose these. I mean, that's what makes this engine kind of waterproof. We'll pull this to the side, we'll disconnect it. See, the gasket is in there. We'll do the same thing with these 2. Make sure the gasket, you know, if it comes off, it might stick on here, it might stick inside the connector. Either way is fine, just make sure you don't lose them. Okay, we've got those connectors out of the way. And now we can pull this wiring harness, just like the other one, out of the way. And so we're getting very close to being ready to pull this engine out. Now, if you'll notice, we still have some coolant lines here. We have some electrical connectors, and we also have some a coolant line here, this one. So this coolant line needs to come off. This coolant line needs to come off. These can stay. These are vacuum hoses. But this line that runs to this reservoir, we will have to take that off. And to take that off, and to get this reservoir emptied out, we're going to have to take off the radiator. So I'll get you set up. I'll show you how to do this. I kind of went back and forth about how I was going to disconnect these. And what I want to do is I just want to show you the routing of the coolant hoses. What we'll do is we'll start from here. This is a thermostat housing. There's a thermostat underneath this housing. And we'll follow this larger hose first. It goes out this way to the right side of the frame and down. And if you look on this side of the frame, it comes out right here. And it goes up and it goes into the radiator here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect at the radiator all of the hoses first and leave them connected to the engine. But I want to track all these hoses just so you have a view of where they go. So let's go back up here. We just traced this larger hose. Let's trace this smaller one. It goes the same way around this side of the frame and up, and it comes into the radiator right here. So the larger hose here, that smaller hose from the thermostat housing here. This hose, this is the overflow hose. This is the one that I was talking about earlier. This goes from here back through here to the coolant reservoir at the bottom. So you can't really see it from here, but you can kind of see the hose running here, and it goes into the bottom of this coolant reservoir. So let me get around to the other side and we'll look at the other hoses and go from there. Here we are on the left-hand side of the motorcycle. There's a hose here that goes into the water pump. Now, we don't need to take this one. This is connected to the engine itself. We don't have to take this one off or the one behind it. There's one behind it here also. You can see there's this hose, and then if you can sneak in here, there's a larger hose back here. Both of these can stay connected. We've already got this one disconnected. Needs a little bit more drainage out of it. And then there's another hose that comes around, if you see, at the very bottom here. If I can just get the camera in, this hose kind of comes around to the front of the engine and runs into where the oil filter is. And this isn't part of the oil coolant system. So that can stay connected also. And that reminds me, I have not drained the oil, so I will be showing you how to do that. But this hose, since we've disconnected it, I'm just going to leave it connected here. But we do have an upper hose on this oil cooling system. You see this one, and it runs also to the radiator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect it down here at the oil cooling system, so we'll leave it connected to the radiator. And then we'll get up in here to this bolt to take the radiator off. So let me get you set up and we'll do that. I've just got a flathead screwdriver. We're going to go ahead and try to disconnect this hose here that runs to it. If you can see where the screwdriver's getting on there. I'm just going to loosen this up. Just loosen the clamp. And hopefully we can just reach up in here and pull this hose off. Okay, so the hose has come loose. I'll just pull the clamp up here to keep it on there. So I've got the hose loose, and since the system was drained, there shouldn't be much. Now this bottom hose is already disconnected, so it seemingly this side of the radiator, which is the left-hand side, we've got completely disconnected. There's a plug here. Now, this is a temperature sensor. Let's just go ahead and unplug this. That's just one plug. Okay, that's connected to this wiring harness, which runs to this major wiring harness here. And if you notice, there's a ground wire that goes up here, this black wire. Zoom in on that. and it's connected here. As we pull the radiator off, we're going to have to disconnect this. Otherwise the radiator won't come all the way out. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the radiator disconnected. We'll go to the other side and do that. I'm sorry if the camera's shaky, I'm holding it. But we have to get both of these off. So we've got this pinch clamp for the smaller hose, and we've got another, you know, the screw-on clamp here. So I'm going to just try to get this pinch clamp off first, if I can. Just move it out of the way, and then we'll try to get this off. Okay, it came off pretty easily. I have a screwdriver also. Here, same screwdriver. Let's just undo this clamp. This one's just a little bit tighter. Okay, that might be enough. Nope, that's fairly tight. Just keep undoing it. And it just, if you notice, the clamp is just kind of starting to unscrew from itself here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep unscrewing it until this nut comes out, and this cheap clamp should just come apart. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll come back. If you notice, I've got the screw part of the clamp here. This should fit down in there, right? It just came out instead of loosening up. So this clamp really just came apart, and since there's no screw piece left in, I should just be able to move it off of there. It should be pretty loose. Okay, so the clamp is off. I should be able to take this hose off. So the hose is off. Now that hose is the larger hose that connects here, and we've already disconnected the other hose here. But the only hose still connected is the overflow hose. And I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect it here at the radiator. It should be fairly easy to get off of there. Finger clamp off. I've got that overflow hose off. So we are ready to drop this radiator off of the bike. I'm going to go on to the other side. There's one screw holding it on, and then there's a ground wire that we'll need to take off, and we'll get this thing off. We're about ready to drop this radiator off of the bike. We've got all the hoses disconnected, all the hoses. There's one screw holding it on. So on this side, there's a bolt, which is this bolt right here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can use my finger. This bolt. It's up underneath the fairing. And there, what looks like it would be another bolt on the other side, similar to this one, is really not a bolt. It's just a pin that kind of slides in there. We're going to undo this bolt, and I'm going to use my power drill here. Okay. So we've got this bolt loosened. Doing this by hand, so we're going to pull this bolt out. So here's the bolt. There's where it went. And now we're going to pull the radiator off, but it's going to still be stuck by this ground wire here. So I'm going to pull this radiator towards me, kind of wiggle it out of here. Whoops, I guess there's one more bolt here. We have a bolt down here. Okay, that's also a 10mm bolt. So we have one bolt up here, and we have another bolt at the bottom. Let's go ahead and get that bolt also disconnected. So it's giving me a little trouble. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that bolt here. I'm going to shut off the camera, and I'll be right back. It turns out that it wasn't really giving me trouble as much as it was just that there's a 10mm nut on the other side of that bolt. So I held onto the nut, the bolt came loose, We'll wiggle it out. So we've got both bolts and the nut out. And now the radiator should kind of just come out. But you can see, like I was saying, the whole thing is loose, but there's still a connector here. I'll disconnect this connector. Okay, the connector's loose. And it turns out maybe that we don't need to disconnect this ground wire. So it looks like we actually have the whole thing loose and ready to come out. Now it's still sticking on the other side because I have to pull the wires through, obviously through the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then we'll have this radiator out and we'll be ready to take the exhaust off.